I first met Bernard Roberts in June of 2020. I was out of work at the time due to the pandemic, and I found myself becoming more isolated and bored. A little backstory: I'm a 43-year-old female, and 3 years ago I found myself divorced at 40. My husband came to me and said he wanted a divorce, and he had met someone else, someone younger. It was a blow to my self-esteem, to say the least. Fast forward 3 years later, and I'm sitting in my apartment, waiting on my unemployment claim, and found myself drawn to social media. I had a Facebook profile, and I used it for playing games, bingo blitz, all of that kind of stuff. I had about 40 Facebook friends at the time, mostly family, work friends, but I wasn't really a social butterfly on Facebook. I hardly ever posted, and mostly played the games on there. And as the isolation and the pandemic raged on, I was reading more and more news pages on Facebook. Good Morning America is something I watched on TV, and I started to comment on their stories on Facebook. That's where I met Bernard Robert. He replied to my comment about the pandemic and said he enjoyed my comment and thought I was very pretty. He then found his way into my messenger and we chatted. He told me he wasn't looking for love online, but he had come across a few of my comments and loved how I spoke, and he loved my profile photo. I rolled my eyes at first. I thought he was just some guy hitting on me or looking for a hookup or something stupid. He then told me he was currently abroad in the UK for his work and stuck there because of the pandemic. I live in Connecticut, and at the time I was working as a desk clerk at a hotel casino resort which had closed up shop due to the pandemic. He told me he was a gemologist and he was dealing with the trade of rare gemstones, gold, and diamonds. He was making a huge $1 million diamond deal when the pandemic shut everything down. He said he's been staying at a hotel and trapped there in the UK. He sent me a handful of photos of himself, and one of a man sipping tea in what looked like a hotel room. He said he had just snapped that picture. He was handsome, but I was guarded. I wasn't looking for love. My heart by this time was pretty cold, and the thought of a romance or even a hookup with a man was a laughable thought. He asked me if I would add him on Facebook. He said he was unable to find my friend's add button, which honestly I don't even know if I'd taken it off of my profile or not. So I sent him a friend request. His friends list was hidden, and he only had a handful of pictures of himself, the same ones that he sent me in Messenger, on his timeline. His likes were a few UK-based restaurants, a couple of music artists, and I thought maybe he's like me. He doesn't fill out much on his profile and doesn't tell a lot of people about the stuff he likes. We continued to chat in Messenger for a bit that day. He told me he was divorced, his wife cheated on him with his best friend, and I found that totally relatable as my husband cheated and then left me. We talked about how painful that is. He said he was 50 years old, which is a bit older than me, but not by much. He went on to tell me that he had a son named Frederick who was 18 and away at school. He told me he was born in Poland, but went to school in Latvia before moving to the States, where he was at his son's age when he moved to the U.S. He said his mother and father were deceased, but they were Spanish and Polish, and he said he had a house in California. When I asked him who's watching his house while he's away, he evaded this question a few times. He then finally told me an old college friend named James was watching his house, and he didn't know when he would be able to come home. When I asked where his son is since school is out, he said he was staying with an uncle. And I found it a bit weird, his responses, but in my mind I thought, maybe he's being guarded about his life and doesn't like personal questions. I'm kind of the same way, especially when talking to a stranger. He did ask me about my personal life. I, of course, shared about my husband and the divorce and the cheating. He then started to ask me more about my work. I was vague about where I worked for my own safety, and all I simply told him was I work in the gaming industry. He didn't understand what that was, and he said he wasn't here for games. I explained to him I work for a casino resort. He then asked me if I get paid good money and how often do I get paid at the casino. I told him the casino and hotel is closed due to the pandemic, and I'm currently home awaiting my unemployment. We chatted about basic stuff, favorite food, music, hopes, dreams, and after a few hours, he said he had to go due to it being late, and he would message me tomorrow. We parted ways, and honestly, I enjoyed the chat, but I didn't think much of it. The next morning I woke to several messages from him, including pictures of a dozen roses, "Good morning, my queen," and asking where I am. I was a bit taken back by how forward he was. I messaged him back telling him it's very early here, 7 a.m., and I'm not always on Facebook. I thanked him for the pictures of the roses and for being kind, and I wished him a good day. He instantly replied to me, as if he was sitting on Messenger waiting. He asked me if I had WhatsApp, as he wasn't always online either, but would like to talk to me in the future. I didn't have WhatsApp. I told him that. And I said, well, we can catch up with each other whenever we're on Facebook. No worries, nice chatting, have a good day. He then went into this long-winded response of how he never thought he would find love again, but he felt an undeniable connection to me and wanted to pursue a relationship. I laughed it off and told him he's in the UK, and if he ever comes home to the States, maybe we'll have dinner or something after the pandemic. But I'm not after a husband or even a boyfriend. He then again asked me for WhatsApp. I was a bit annoyed at him at this point and felt he was moving way too fast. I told him I hardly know you, and I'm not going to download or give you my personal information like my phone number for safety, and he needs to respect a woman's safety and privacy, and it's not right for me to give that information out to a stranger. He replied with fine and went off Messenger. I again rolled my eyes and went about my day. Late that night, I went onto my laptop to play Facebook games as I had 17 messages from Bernard. He was asking where I was. I had 2 missed video calls from him. He sent me links to romantic songs and said he missed me and thought I was beautiful and to please not be afraid to love again. I played my online games and didn't respond to his messages, and I went to bed that night. The next day, I didn't bother going online, but that Friday I went on and I was flooded with roses, love notes, poems, and then a message saying he was feeling ugly, useless, and no woman will ever love him. I don't know why, but it struck a nerve with me and I felt bad. I had spent years in a loveless marriage where I was made to feel this way, and I never ever wanted to make someone else feel this way either. So I responded to his messages. I had told him to please do not feel that way. I explained to him I'm afraid to let someone in due to my past and that he's a wonderful man and I'm sure he will find a lovely woman, but I'm not emotionally ready for a relationship. Of course, he responded right away, telling me he waited all day for me to come online. He was thinking of me, writing a poem about me. I was in his thoughts and that God told him I was to come into his life and lift him up. He wanted to get to know me more and learn more about what we want with each other. I guess at the time I was feeling vulnerable. I caved to his kind words. I had never met a man that was kind in this way. My ex-husband was not the most loving man. He loved his football games and football players more than me. We ended up talking through Messenger, and yes, I did download WhatsApp for him. We jumped from Facebook to WhatsApp. He even called me and spoke to me for a short time on WhatsApp. He had a thick accent, which he said was a mix of Latvian and Polish. I've never spoken to anyone from either of those countries, so at the time I didn't know. We started speaking nearly every day, and late at night would be WhatsApp voice chats. He told me about his gemstone business and his friend James, who was watching his home. He sent me pictures of his house and all the details, including the address. It was a beautiful home compared to the dump that I lived in. I guess over time a romance bloomed, but I was still guarded. I even got a friend request from his so-called friend James, who never spoke to me other than telling me that Bernard is such a wonderful man, and that was it. As time went on, I found myself drawn to Bernard. We would message good morning, I love you, which floored me, and yes, a few times we were sexually romantic on the phone. Normally, though, he would call me between 2 and 3 in the morning, which, if he was in the UK, it made sense because that would be his daytime. During our courtship, I didn't let on that I was having financial issues. My unemployment was backed up, and my claim wasn't being paid out yet. We had a hold on rent payments and so on, so I was okay, and I had shelter, but my electric, phone, food, and everything was having issues, and I was holding out for those unemployment checks. One night we were chatting in Messenger on WhatsApp, and he asked me what I had eaten for dinner. I hesitated, but in truth I had not eaten dinner. I was skipping meals here and there to make my food last longer. The food banks at the time were short on food due to the pandemic, and I still had not gotten my unemployment. So I told him I was just skipping dinner. Well, he became upset, asking me why, and I needed to keep my nutrition up. I then explained to him the truth of the issues that I was having with my finances. He became upset, telling me that he is my man and I should have told him he can take care of me. I told him I don't want a handout and it's not his problem. He then asked me for my address and he wanted to send me dinner. I argued back and forth with him, but part of me felt safe to give him my address, so I foolishly did, and only because he had given me his so-called address in California. He told me he was ordering dinner for me, and I begged him not to. About a little over an hour later, I received a delivery from Grubhub for a family meal of KFC. I was absolutely floored, and the dinner must have cost him at least $50 with the delivery fee and all the items he ordered. I was in shock, but I was hungry, so I accepted it. The receipt from Grubhub had no information other than the person who placed the order was named Martha. No last name or any other information was given, just the name Martha. When I questioned him about this, he said that that was the name of his personal assistant in the States who handles all his finances, and so she put her name on the delivery receipt. Well, I thanked him for dinner and said yes, I was in love with this man and for all of his kindness. We continued to talk late into the night, every night. A week later, I was still having issues with my unemployment, and he asked me if I've gotten my unemployment yet. It was nearly a question he asked at least twice a day. He was pestering me about it. He then told me he was going to send me some money to live off of until I got my unemployment. I refused, as I'm not about taking money from anyone. He insisted, and he said he has lots of money from his gemstone dealing, and he wanted me to have a little something. He asked if I had a bank account, to which I did, but then he asked me to open a Chime bank account instead online. He said with his company he could do online banking and it's easier. I'd never heard of Chime Bank, but I went online and I was able to open an account. I gave him the information and he said when my debit card arrived in the mail to let him know that information as well, and he will top off my account. I really didn't want this, but he insisted. He also said he's never felt this way before and wanted us to marry when he returned from the UK. Looking back, it's all so crazy. I must have been out of my mind, but I accepted his internet proposal of marriage. He started calling me his queen, and he put a photo of us together online for his photo collage on Facebook. I was head over heels for this man at this point. He was kind, sweet, and caring. The only thing I questioned is he would never video chat. He would voice call, but on WhatsApp I tried to video chat with him once and he wouldn't take my call. He said due to his work contract he was unable to video chat because it is his work phone which he uses. I took him at face value, and I, in the back of my mind, did wonder. When my Chime debit card arrived in the mail, I had my routing number and I gave him all of the information. He said he was going to have his assistant Martha deposit some cash in my account. 4 days later, there was a $700 deposit in my account from a woman named Martha. She did a bank transfer from Chase Bank in Alabama to my Chime online account. I was floored, and he insisted I use that money. He then told me to save some of that money, but pay some bills if I needed to. I used some of the money to pay my overdue electric and cell phone bill. By this time I was sure that this was love between him and I. Imagine chatting and voice calling someone, sometimes for 8 hours a day, like two high school kids in love. We talked about his son and maybe us having a baby together, which I know at my age was crazy. We had very sexually charged late night chats. He was driving me wild every time we spoke late at night. I did things on the phone with him that I've never done before. I felt out of my body during this whole relationship. He encouraged me to contact unemployment about my checks and said if I link my Chime account to the direct deposit, I would likely get paid faster. I trusted him totally, so I contacted unemployment about direct deposit and changed my bank information to my Chime account. During this time, he told me he was having issues with his assistant Martha and she was quitting the company, leaving him in trouble, as she handles all the hotel payments and finances for the company, while he is in the UK. He said he was angry with her and he wants to have her arrested, as he thinks she's been embezzling company money, and his bank account was frozen and being held for investigation. He was so upset and crying, and I'd never heard him cry before. I didn't know what to think or do. He asked me if I could possibly get a loan for $3,000 and he would pay me back once he returned from the UK. I was a bit dumbfounded, and I didn't have the credit rating good enough for that type of loan from a bank. He then asked me again if I've gotten my unemployment, and I told him no, but it's supposed to come soon. And he knew it's for many weeks of back pay. I told him I would try and get a loan, but please be patient with me, as my credit is not great. He was upset. He said he was tired and needed to go to bed. He was not as sweet as before, but I chalked it up to him being emotionally upset. We hung up, and later that night I got a message from James, his so-called friend on Facebook. He said he wanted to reach out because he's worried about his friend being stuck in the UK, and that he wanted to let me know in secret that Bernard was without food and was about to be on the streets because the hotel bill is not being paid, but he's too ashamed to tell me about his situation and how dire it is. I told James, well, can you loan him the money? But James said he's unable to, as his finances are tied up in a mortgage deal for a new home and he's investing in. He then went on to tell me that he's never seen his friend so in love with me. He wants to marry me and he's planning to get a ring. I was again dumbfounded, but James then went on to tell me how poor his friend was in the UK due to Martha taking the money from the company, and how his bank account is frozen and the company has turned his back on them. I told James he needs to contact the embassy, or Bernard needs to, and they can try helping him get his flight home, as many people who are stranded were getting flights home and getting loans from the US government. James became angry at me and started telling me that I'm playing games with his friend, that he knows I got money from Bernard, $700, and that I must be a gold digger. He went from kind to horrible in a few minutes. I ended up blocking him, and I told Bernard about what happened. He was angry but said his friend was only trying to look out for him. Then he asked me if I was able to get that loan yet. I felt so much pressure and I felt guilty, as he did send me money and food when I needed it. He kept the pressure on me, calling me day and night about a loan. I was going absolutely crazy, sleep deprived, in love with this man and out of my mind. I applied for an advanced loan. It's similar to a payday loan. Basically, you can get a loan because your credit is low, but it's at a high interest and has to be paid off quickly. I was able to get $2,000, and I let him know I came up with $2,000, but he became upset, saying I wasn't trying hard enough and to apply for a different loan company for another $1,000. He swore up and down he would pay me back double if I loaned this money to him, and if I loved him I would do this for him. Looking back, I should have blocked him, but truly I believe that he loved me. I felt guilty, as he had helped me. I went online and was able to get a $1,000 loan through the Web Loan Company. Their interest rates, if you ever heard of them, are outrageous. And between both loan companies and loan payments, both of them were more than my rent and car payment included. Both amounts were sent to my Chime account by direct deposit. The next day, thankfully, my unemployment went into my Chime account, and it was a large amount, nearly $6,000 of back pay and pandemic unemployment. So I had roughly $10,000 in the bank. I let him know that the $3,000 had come through, and I asked him how I can send it to his name in the UK. He told me that due to being an American in the UK, he couldn't access money directly, and that he would let me know who to send it to in the next few days. We went on as business as usual, love poems, songs, late-night sexy chats, plans for the future. He showed me a photo of a ring he was going to buy me, and I was in near tears, thinking he truly wants to be with me. I must have been out of my mind. I asked him again about sending the $3,000 to him, and he told me to wait, and he will let me know. I decided to start paying some bills with my unemployment, as I was behind on a few things and I wanted to make at least one rent payment to my landlord to show effort that I was trying to pay. My rent is paid through a site called Rent Cafe, where you can log in and just pay via debit card. When I went online to make a payment, it didn't go through. I tried several times and it said insufficient funds. I thought maybe it was the website, as it's happened before. Then I got a text alert from Chime Bank, text after text, showing my money was being spent. They do those text alerts when you use your card, and there was 4 transactions that came through for $2,000 each for an online currency purchase. I found out it was a Bitcoin. Someone used my card to buy Bitcoins. I called Bernard right away and he didn't answer. I jumped on the Chime's customer service number and spoke to someone. They said the transactions were for online currency purchases using my debit card with my name on the purchase transactions. I informed them I have no idea how or what Bitcoin is, I've never bought it, and I've never used my card. Another transaction came through right as I was talking to the bank, which was for an online card purchase through Steam for $500 in Steam cards. Chime Bank was less than helpful, and they asked me if anyone would have access to my card account or card numbers. I let them know that my boyfriend had me set up the account, and that he would be the only one who has access, as I gave him the password, username, and debit numbers as he deposited money in the account for me. Chime told me that since I gave him access to the card and account, if he made those purchases, I would be responsible as I allowed him access. I was absolutely angry. I hung up with Chime after they closed the account for me. They said they would investigate the purchases, but warned me that if I gave access to my account to someone else, I would be at fault for the purchases. I tried calling Bernard again and again. I went on Facebook and discovered to my horror that his profile was gone, and that when I tried calling him on WhatsApp, I believe I was either blocked or he had vanished, as his information and profile photo was no longer on WhatsApp, and my messages that I sent remained unread. I unblocked the friend James, but when I unblocked, I was met with a message saying the profile is no longer available, broken or removed. I started having a panic attack, and my heart was beating through my chest. That bastard took my money. I then started to play detective and checked his photos. To my horror, I found out the photos were stolen off a man named Stuart James. Apparently his photos are stolen and used by a lot of online scammers, and the real man is married, with kids, and no longer on the internet. I then searched for Martha, as I had her last name on the money transfer deposit. I found a woman by her unique last name online in that state. It was an older woman, I would guess in her 70s, and I messaged her on Facebook asking if she knew this man, and showed her a profile pic of so-called Bernard Robert. She responded asking if she could call me, and I gave her my number. We spoke and unraveled the scam. She was in an online relationship with the man in the photo, but that was not his name, Bernard Robert. She knew him as Thomas Harold. She met him on Silver Singles, dating, and he was 62 and going to retire from the military, but he was having issues with paying for his retirement document, which was $700, and she was to send to me in my name, as she believed I was the military retirement agent. I was floored. He used both of us. I explained everything that happened to me, and Martha happened to have a recording and voice chat that she had with her man, and yes, you guessed it, it was my man too. The same scammer was talking to both of us, and God knows how many other women. She ended the relationship after she showed up after paying for his retirement, and he asked her to open a Chime bank account to deposit millions he was getting for his so-called retirement, although he never showed up to see her. She said it struck her as odd and didn't have his own bank account. When she questioned him, he got very mean and nasty, so she ended up blocking him. Martha was a victim just like I was. She said she sent $700 thinking she was paying for his retirement. She also sent Steam cards, Apple iTunes cards to him, and found out that he opened a credit card in her name, which he was using to send food all over the United States. She thought he was deployed to Afghanistan. We both got played, and to this day I've never seen or heard from him or the friend James again. Chime Bank never refunded my money and could only tell me, don't ever give out your personal information to strangers online again. I lost everything and I was in debt for these loans. I'm now still paying on these loans, which has hurt my credit score and has totally closed up my hardened mind to ever meeting anyone online again. I get friend requests all the time from fake profiles and even messages on WhatsApp from random people. I eventually close my WhatsApp as I know they are scammers. Maybe it's the same scammer or someone else. Martha also had the same issues, and if anything came up from this scam experience, Martha and I are now friends on Facebook, and we have become fighters against these scammers. It's a very hard lesson learned, and when people say, how could you be so stupid, I respond to them that I'm a very intelligent woman. But during the pandemic, isolation, bad marriage, and being duped by my husband, and all the years of being unloved, I had a brief glimpse into being with a man who was attentive to me, kind, loving, and who showed me everything and told me everything I wanted to hear and stuff that I've never heard before. I was in love. I was love-struck, blinded, whatever you want to call it. But when you're not in a good mental or spiritual place, these scammers can smell it and they go for you. Please take my story as a lesson and do not do what I did. Thanks, Nicole. We'd like to thank Nicole for sharing her story. If you'd like to share your story of an encounter you had with a scammer, you can find us on Facebook under the page Scamming Scammers Action, or drop us an email, scammingscammers@gmail.com. Give us permission to narrate and investigate your story prior to making a video, and we will turn your story into a video so others can share in your experience. Thanks for listening. Bye.